Okie dokie, I got the snacks laid out, I got the TV hung up on the wall, and we're all set. Thanks for coming by to watch the big game with me, know-it-all fan.
Brian, you do know that the big game is still a few days away, right?
Yes, but the Super Bowl is so much more than that. There's all that build-up. There's the pre-game analysis, the pre-pre-game analysis, the post-pre-pre-game analysis before that, and the Pro Bowl. So this year, I'm going to do it up like a real fan should. I'm just going to veg out, absorb all this content, and relish in the glory of what the NFL is all about.
You mean ignoring damning concussion research, looking past players' history of domestic abuse, and bullying cities into paying for publicly funded stadiums?
Yes, in America. Let's watch.
This year's Super Bowl has been canceled after quarterback Tom Brady stubbed his toe. Hail Goodell.
Aw.
Well, I guess I better get going.
Hey. The game's been canceled, but you know what? There's still alternatives out there. What else can we watch?
Canadian football?
No, I want something big and loud and smash mouth, but without all those stodgy NFL rules.
So, rugby?
What the hell am I, a college student? No. I'm an American, and I want some American football, damn it. Where's my football? The XFL!
No!
How have I gone on this long without talking about the XFL? Truly, it is one of Vince McMahon's biggest, most public blunders of all time. A faceplant even larger than that of the World Bodybuilding Federation. When you think of all the mistakes WWE's made over the years, this upstart football league usually ranks near the very top. But why was it such a failure? Why did it only go one season before they pulled the plug on it?
Because the football was bad.
Well, I thought it was because it tried to mix in too much wrestling.
Or because they pissed off the wrong people.
Well, maybe it was all those things and more. So let's tackle this thing already. The Extreme Football League.
Come on, Brian, you're screwing up already. XFL didn't stand for Extreme Football League.
What are you talking about? Of course it did. The company was using that word all the time. You know, National Football League, Extreme Football League. Come on.
XFL, it didn't stand for anything. They were just letters.
Really? Huh. Could have sworn what it stood for. Maybe it was just a dream I had. Anyway, the XFL was born in February of 2000 when the WWF and NBC announced their 50-50 joint venture. The two entities each put $50 million into the project.
I remember the whole thing came about because Vince McMahon really wanted to buy the Canadian Football League.
Yes, that's true, that's right. Boy, he shot to stick to Canadians around that time. The teams were spread out across the country, and some of the markets hadn't had pro football for a very long time, if ever. You had the Los Angeles Extreme, the San Francisco Demons, the Las Vegas Outlaws, the Orlando Rage, the Memphis Maniacs, the Chicago Enforcers, the New York, New Jersey Hitmen, and the Birmingham Blast.
The what, bruh?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that was the original team name, but then they changed it to the Birmingham Thunderbolts because Birmingham has a rough history with blasts, so to speak. This is awkward. The teams were made up of players and coaches who, let's just say, weren't NFL caliber. Many players had washed out of the league or had played in NFL Europe or arena football. Some had never even played pro ball to begin with. And then once they got drafted, they were only given, get this, 4.5 weeks to practice before the season opener.
4.5 weeks? That's not enough time for a team to gel. That's not enough time to remodel a bathroom.
Oh, which is fitting since the ratings were about to go in the toilet. The XFL was scheduled to begin less than a week after Super Bowl 35, with games to air on NBC, UPN, and TNN. But just a few days before opening kickoff, the gods blessed Vince McMahon and Dick Ebersol with one of the most obvious omens since that time frogs came down from the sky in Egypt.
Ooh, Brian, can I talk about this one? Please.
Sure, go ahead.
The blimp crash. On the week of the AFC Championship game in Oakland, a big XFL blimp was flying around town to promote the league when it crashed into a waterfront restaurant. Fortunately, no one was seriously injured, but the crash did cause more than $2 million in damages to the blimp. And that's exactly what Vince gets for letting Rikishi fly the damn thing.
Ominous dirigible crashes and anemic practice time aside, the XFL had all the momentum in the world. The WWF was doing its best business ever, they had the backing of one of America's biggest networks, and demand for football in America was red hot. It would be hard to screw this up. So, let's see how they screwed this one up. On February 3rd, 2001, the XFL kicked off with a bang in Las Vegas as the hometown Outlaws played the New York, New Jersey Hitmen. Now, keep in mind, the XFL was a football league. They played football. Yes, they were co-owned by the WWF, but they wanted to stand on its own merit. So, with that in mind, let's see what the first few moments of this XFL football broadcast looked like.
The Rock says he's all psyched about the XFL. Oh, wait a minute. The Rock isn't psyched. He's pumped about the XFL.
Are you ready for some Rocky? Great way to grab the attention of all those football fans you're trying to steal. This wasn't world's highest paid actor, The Rock, yet. This was just really popular wrestler, The Rock, which is great for the WWF, but not when you're trying to make this new football league look legit.
And look, more WWF stars putting their 2 cents in.
I hear the guy who runs the NFL, Paul Tagliabue, said that the XFL is a non-issue.
Some people are asking me whether the XFL will be a success. Here's a tip from me, The Undertaker. Don't bet against it.
The XFL. We're not wrestling unless we decide we are.
Of course, we can't talk about the first XFL game without talking about Mr. McMahon's opening salvo.
We welcome you to our brand of football. It gives you freedom to go places that other leagues have determined to be off limits.
Here's one of the first problems that plagued the XFL. Their non-stop bashing of the National Football League. From the very beginning, and all throughout their season, they took every chance they could to stick a thumb in the eye of the undisputed champion of American football.
You might be careful of that non-issue, just might bite you on your ass.
I think that the older NFL audience is really going to enjoy what we do, and quite frankly, they're going to say, geez, why can't the NFL be like this?
The Rock in Los Angeles, and the entire country for that matter, are sick and tired of NFL suits telling us what we want.
So, Vince has always been about bucking authority and challenging opponents who were larger than him. How's this any different?
Because Vince wasn't pushing around other wrestling promotions here. He was a newbie in the world of American football, and one with a less than stellar reputation. It would be one thing if they said, hey, we're a cool, edgy alternative to the NFL, we're less stodgy about the rules, etc. But by directly saying they were better than the NFL, and that the NFL sucked, not only were they making a claim that they couldn't objectively back up, but they were also upsetting fans of the NFL, who were vital to the XFL's success. Between this and their constant use of wrestlers in their programming, this turned away a lot of viewers.
Ladies and gentlemen, he is the personification.
Mike Adamle! Sweet Jesus, keep him off my TV!
Ryan, it's okay. He's not going to be on Raw for another 7 years.
Not long enough! Also part of the announced team was Jesse Ventura, taking a break from what was clearly his less important job as governor of Minnesota to take part in this experiment. Things were off to a hot enough start in this opening game, the crowd was electric and damn near fanatical, and of course the much ballyhooed cheerleaders gleefully grinded their way into America's hearts. Each tawdry dance routine was a scene from basketball come to life. Players were given the freedom to have custom names or phrases put on the backs of their jerseys, and while many players shirked away from doing so, others embraced it. And perhaps the most famous of all the nicknames had to go to Rod Smart of the Outlaws. He hate me.
He hate me because I will outplay my opponent. He hate me because I'm an outlaw.
One of the big things about the XFL was that the rules were going to be a lot less strict than those of the NFL, in an attempt to make the game more exciting. This included things like a shorter play clock, no point after kicks, a no fair catch rule, and a scramble in place of a coin toss.
But isn't the coin toss a fair enough way to determine who gets the opening possession?
No way, Jose.
Hey, if Dick Butkus says so, who are you to criticize? So yes, the scramble, a one-on-one 20-yard dash to the ball between one person from each team. It was a unique way to begin games, a true mano-a-mano battle, but it wasn't perfect.
When did they realize that?
Oh, right around the very beginning of one of the very first games they ever played. That player separated his shoulder and was out for the rest of the season. The first XFL injury. Did I mention these guys had to buy their own health insurance?
And these players were paid in peanuts compared to players in other sports leagues.
That's important too. On-field action aside, you could tell right away the XFL was covering things in a way the NFL simply wasn't at this point, putting live mics on players and coaches in between plays. And while a lot of the players embraced the up-close coverage, not everyone was a fan.
Get out of the way, camera, get out of the way. Get out of the way, I gotta see here.
And while some of the on-field chatter was only audible to TV audiences, sometimes a QB's play call would be projected to the entire arena, which made it pretty easy for defenders to snuff out. The first game of the XFL, a league that promised fans a more exciting alternative to the big bad NFL, was anything but. The first point scored in this historic game was a measly field goal, and by the fourth quarter, Las Vegas had a 19-0 lead against the Hitmen. Now, with the NFL, or really any other sport, even if the game was a total blowout or an offensive struggle, they always broadcast the game until the final whistle. But 1 minute into the fourth quarter of this first XFL game, the league did something truly revolutionary.
We'll be back to check in from here in Vegas in moments, but let's go to our colleagues Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler.
Before the original game wrapped up, they tossed it over to a much better game going on in Orlando, as the Rage were in a close battle against the Chicago Enforcers. They never went back to the Vegas-New York game. Wonky programming choices aside, the first XFL game did very well in the ratings game, pulling a 9.5. It crushed ESPN's overall Sunday Night NFL coverage by 25% and pulled a better rating among 18 to 34-year-old men than Monday Night Football's average.
But the hype for the opening weekend of XFL football couldn't win out over the reality that the quality of the football wasn't worth watching. The ratings for Week 2 on NBC was less than half than Week 1's, of 4.6.
Well, hey, that's still good, right? I mean, it's still a huge drop from Week 1, but, 4.6, that's still okay, isn't it?
Well, yeah, if they stayed at that number, but spoiler alert, they did not. Each week, the ratings on NBC fell and fell and fell. By Week 3, the rating was 3.1, Week 4, 2.6. By April, it hovered around the 1.5 mark each week. And you can forget about UPN and TNN, which by the end weren't even making TNA numbers. And don't even get me started on the dwindling live attendance.
Okay, I get it, fine. There had to be something redeeming about all this, right? There were storylines, weren't there?
Well, actually, yeah.
Sweet.
With Jesse Ventura.
Huh?
Early in the season, Ventura started egging on Hitman coach Rusty Tillman on commentary.
Gutless Rusty. Look at that, it's 4th down, foot to go, and they're going to kick a field goal.
Ventura was known for saying loud, uninformed things on commentary all season long, but for some reason he was told to keep antagonizing the coach, who in all honesty probably just wanted to focus on his job.
Are you going to talk to me?
No, I don't want to talk to you. No, I don't want to talk to you.
Things got so, quote, heated between the two that they dedicated an entire hype package to their, quote, feud at the top of one of their next games.
Wow, Rage Against the Machine. That's a good choice for this one-sided, put-upon rivalry that has no way of being concluded. But it turns out the biggest feud of the season wasn't between teams or players or announcers at all, but between the XFL and Saturday Night Live. A Week 2 matchup on NBC between LA and Chicago went into double overtime, which had already been slowed down due to a power outage and an injury timeout. The extra long game delayed a much anticipated episode of SNL that was hosted by Jennifer Lopez. As a result, all primetime XFL games from then on out had their coverage cut off by 11 p.m. Eastern time, whether or not the game was actually over. God, remember when Jennifer Lopez was like the biggest thing in entertainment for a while?
Oh, God, that was a scary couple of years.
By Week 6, things were in the doldrums. March Madness was about to begin, and Vince wanted to cling to what little ratings they had. But as the man who made wrestling popular again, he knew what he had to do to bring the fans back.
Titties!
Some have called it an unprecedented television event. Others have called it a desperate ploy to increase sagging ratings.
In what many consider a real bottom-of-the-barrel moment for the upstart league, the XFL promised viewers a look inside the cheerleaders' locker room. You know, where all that sexy sex stuff goes on.
In this halftime sketch, Mr. McMahon is pumping up the cameraman like he's sending a soldier off to battle.
And I want you to go get me some ratings.
Hey! You idiot!
Come on, did you really think they were going to go there? It's network TV.
The pre-taped segment took us into the depraved mind of the unconscious cameraman, a dream sequence which featured the girls playing Twister with gorillas, strip poker with the devil, some proto-Wyatt family members, and Rodney frickin' Dangerfield.
Yeah, I was the quarterback, and it was rough. I kept falling in love with the center.
And here I thought Meat Wally Sparks was his lowest point. Bruno wakes up from his dream to an enraged McMahon, the package is over, and Jesse sums everything up with this line.
I'll tell you, it's typical of Vince McMahon. Anything he touches turns to you-know-what.
This whole segment could have worked if this were on WWF TV. It still would have been stupid, but at least it would have been in a bubble. But casual football fans who don't watch the WWF would have no idea why Vince was acting that way. The Mr. McMahon character only works when he has a hero to fight, and I don't just mean Bob Costas.
Let me finish. That as a defense. Let me finish. They rejected that as a defense. Would you please let me finish? Absolutely.
The XFL lingered for several more weeks. The quality of the actual football had improved by the playoffs, but by that point the fans had already tuned out. In the end, the LA Extreme played and defeated their division rivals, the 5-5 San Francisco Demons, in the $1 Million Game.
Which was originally called the Big Game at the end of the season.
The XFL. We don't think too highly of our fans.
The WWF and NBC each lost $35 million when it was all said and done. Citing dismal TV ratings, NBC pulled out of their agreement to broadcast a second season, which they had every right to do since the 50-50 ownership made it so they didn't have to answer to anyone. Vince had planned to keep the league going on UPN and TNN, but UPN said they would only air the games if SmackDown were cut to 90 minutes. At that point, Vince took his black and red ball and went home. The XFL was officially dead.
Why do you sound so sad about this, Brian? The XFL was a total dumpster fire. The XFL was never going to get the respect it wanted because it was associated with wrestling. Most sports media outlets didn't want to touch it, and Vince made things worse by directly picking a fight with the NFL and their fans. If Vince would have just shut his mouth once in a while, the XFL might not have been rejected. And not to mention his national laughingstock lost millions of dollars. Do you know what the WWF could have done with the money they spent on the XFL? They could have bought out those big WCW contracts and actually made the invasion something worth a damn.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, it was a bad look for WWF, but I mean, for all the bad things the XFL did, there was a lot of potential there. The thing with any upstart business or organization, no matter what it is it needs time to grow and work out the kinks, and the XFL was never given the time to do that. The on-field play was bad because the players weren't NFL caliber, but they also weren't given enough time to practice and gel as a new team. If they were able to get another season under their belts, things in that department could have drastically improved. And when you think about all the XFL players who did well for themselves in the NFL and CFL afterward, including league MVP Tommy Maddox, a lot of those players were already on the cusp. In my opinion, the one good thing the XFL did was allowing players to show their personalities during the game. I'm not saying we need personalized jerseys, but I'm all for trash talking and excessive celebrations. It's a game, you're supposed to have fun. There's a reason Vince McMahon and so many others have called it the No Fun League. And come on, you can't say the XFL hasn't been influential in today's football.
Well, you might have a point. They were the first league to really use Skycam to its full potential. Now it's all over football. Players and coaches who are mic'd up on the sideline are as commonplace now in the NFL as they were in the XFL. And the XFL placed a lot of emphasis on locker room coverage during games. And today, that's pretty much the NFL Network's entire programming schedule during the offseason.
Right, and what about the NFL's monopoly on pro football in America, or the fact that college ball is the league's free farm system and the players are getting ripped off? Football needs a developmental league for guys who don't get drafted. The NFL's European League died not too long after this, and I bet if the XFL were still around today, it would have made for a viable alternative to the big brand. The XFL may have been flawed, and Vince's ego ultimately cost him big, but the fact that we all still remember the XFL, and the fact that its influence is still all over today's game, can't be a bad thing.
Yeah, I guess I can see what you're saying. There was a lot of bad, but there was some good, just like in wrestling.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta run. Thanks for having me over.
Hey, don't mention it, fan. Oh my god, this is so awkward. I mean, you've been in my house all this time. I don't even know your real name.
Ian. Ian Wesley Campbell.
IWC? Huh. Well, makes sense.
Lights out, gorilla.